Welcome to the Love Government. I'm Dennis Leary, and we are doing a series of videos called Sex Signs. We are now on the 13th episode. 13 is a lucky number according to the feminine point of view. The feminine has 13 moons in her calendar, and a woman was the first probably to conceive of a calendar and a time sequential event to life, because when she menstruates, it's about the same episode timing as the moon phases. So the moon and the menstruation and the ovulation go together. So a woman would have been logically the first to figure out how time operates. Anyway, the 13th episode happens to be the 13 relating to the 13 moons, full moons, that go into a year, a solar year. Why in the world did 13 ever become an unlucky number? Why do certain building high-rises skip the 13th floor? Because people are so superstitious. Well, this has an explanation, and I explain it by the patriarchal propaganda machine at work even back in those times. So they, in order to foster their regime, had to kill off the woman culture. So what did they do? They made 13 an unlucky number, but basically it's a very lucky number. We still have traces of that woman culture left in the calendar, even in the Julian, Gregorian type of patriarchal male calendars, with Easter. Easter is a movable feast that goes according to the phases of the moon. It moves around like the moon does. The moon changes, waxes, wanes, full, crescent. That's more of the woman's way of thinking as opposed to the man's, which wants to have order and predictability and control and more of a linear arrangement. So what the patriarchs actually did was take all of these woman symbols and convert as many as they could into male symbols. So the sun, which is actually a woman sign, was made to be the son of God in a male sense, because the sun is bigger and stronger apparently than the moon. But in the love government, we rewrite the rewrite. We go back and tell the truth about things, which is quite easy and nice to do once you see the big picture. We're talking here about sex signs because we believe that sex is where it's at as far as love goes. Love and sex go together. Love is the more general term that includes more affection and emotionality, and sex is the more physical, down-to-earth term, but the two go together. And sex without love becomes corrupt. And love without sex becomes too ethereal in the clouds without your feet on the ground. I want to look at things from a philosophical point of view in order to get the big picture. So in talking about sex signs and talking about sex, is so important to us, if we can take the high ground, then we can see the lay of the land, how things fit together, where they go. It's like being up in an airplane or on a mountain. You can see where the rivers run, where the roads go, and the landscape. So that is what we attempt to do in philosophy, which is to think the high thoughts, get the broad picture, and that way we get to see things. We get to see where we came from, where we're going, and what we should be doing now. In patriarchal philosophy, it gets pretty abstract, but it always goes back to the basic originating feminine philosophy. Patriarchs will use words like essence and existence. They say existence precedes essence. These are highly abstract terms, but they mean something in terms of love. Existence means our existing life, our day-to-day actions, our feet on the ground, like sex. and like love, but it's more down to earth. That's what we call existence, or existentialism brought that back into focus. Essence, on the other hand, has been the traditional philosophy where you talk about essences or substances. These are ideas that are in kind of boxes separated from each other. And then we talk about being. That's a big word in patriarchal philosophy because they think in terms of a chain of being. That means the top is the supreme being, and then underneath him is a chain of lesser beings. That's the philosophy of being. Very important in patriarchal way of looking at things. We don't quite look at it that way, though, because we're rewriting the rewrite, and a big part of the rewrite is to rewrite the philosophy, which is the high thoughts. So being becomes loving in our philosophy. There's something bigger than being, and existence and essence and all that kind of thing, and that is loving, because loving is a relationship already in place, and being is more like boxes of being. So we're talking about foundational reality when we talk philosophy or metaphysics. It's very important, but it's very important what words, how do we frame these questions? This is going to make the big, big difference. So we're talking about something that's structurally pre-given, taken for granted. And love government, as I've said a number of times before, the love government is actually a structure. It's a house of cards laid out in a structure like a house or a temple. So we travel through that structure. It makes it a journey. We're going on a journey. And in the process of the journey, we build up a relationship with ourselves and with other lovers and with the lover. And when we get to be true lovers, then we find that we're home. Home is not exactly a place, but it's really more of a face. We see ourselves and we see other people, how they really are. Another question that comes up in this big picture type of philosophy is, how do I know? Somebody might say, well, how do you know what you're talking about? Why should I even listen to you? How do you know? And what do you know? That's called epistemology in philosophy. It comes from meaning to know. So I'll tell you how I know what I know, or think what I think I know what I know. And the first part is experience. I'm 73 years old. I've had quite a few life experiences. And so if I reflect on those experiences, I come to a knowledge that's grounded. I can say, well, I've experienced that, and that brings with it a certain knowledge. But that's not enough, because everybody has experiences. So I have to access my intuition. Well, I use my intuition. That's kind of a deep feeling about things. So my intuition tells me certain things. And then that's another aspect of that, is to make a proper connection. It's like an electrical plug. You have to plug the thing into the source. So in the love government, we make the connection. We plug into the source, which is called love, or lover in personal terms, personified, which means all of us as lovers. So I do it mentally if I don't say it out loud, but in these sessions here, of these filming sessions, we're actually filming this in a sunny California, Southern California, in a greenhouse, in a garden, and that's part of the love scenario. So we ask here, in kind of a ceremony inside of ourselves, for all true lovers from all dimensions of space and time and number and form, so all the things that we talked about in the cards, to come here and help us and participate. And they do. They show up. How do you know? Can't see them, but you can feel them. The vibration you can feel. And it makes sense that if you're going to ask for something, it tends to show up, or they tend to show up. And then another way of knowing is to actually program for things. If you want to know something that you don't know, well, you set up a program. It's like a little computer program in your body, and you say, I want such and such. Now you might want something like, I want a new house. So you program for it. You think about it, and then you arrange your life so that that house is going to show up. In the love government, we focus on love. and the lover. That's our program. And then we run that program, and lots of things support that. There's a hardware part of it, and then there's a software part of it, but it's all has that focus on love. So then we're testing the system, we're experimenting, and we say, I wonder if this is going to work. I'm going to program my life for love. I'm going to make that my intention, that I want to be governed by love, rather than governed by other things like money or comfort or safety or consumerism or drugs or other things. Okay, some of all those things, but no, I want to go directly to love. That's called a program. And then that software program runs, and then you see whether it works or not. So in the love government, we've done enough work that we think that it works pretty well. We got enough experience now. This program actually works. It actually works. Love does come because we invite it in, or her in, or him in, and then it comes in. Anyway, that's part of the philosophy. Now, if we apply the philosophy, that's called, applied philosophy. And I speak of the 3 P's, on the negative side and on the positive side. On the negative side, if you read the literature of the love government, you will see I talk about patriarchy, the big patriarch, the macho man. And he has 3 sons called the 3 little P's, and they are power, profit, and porn. Power, profit, and porn. These are the 3 P's, and they operate in our society. Usually undercover. They're undercover agents. They don't want to expose themselves too much. But we run a different program, and our program is to take the person. That's the big P, the person or the principal, and then that person or principal has 3 daughters, let's say, and they are, first of all, Pandora. Ever hear of Pandora? That comes from the Greek myths and the way the Greek people of old times looked at things. And Pandora was the first mortal woman. The first mortal woman was Pandora. Pandora means pan, means all, and Dora means gift. She was all gifted. She had all the gifts, and she was all giving. That's the Greek myth of Pandora. Now, Pandora's box is another thing. All her gifts were contained in this box, and they were all gifts, positive gifts. But the patriarchs, again, rewrote that story too, and they made the box full of evils. So poor Pandora gets rewritten by patriarchs, and then the box is filled with evils. But that wasn't the way. The original story is that her box was filled with gifts, and she gives out all the gifts to us. Now the Hebrews and the Jews and the Greek and the Israelites had a different story, and that was Adam and Eve. And Eve was said to be, the word actually means mother of all the living. Mother of all the living. And in the Greek way, the pagan way, was the mother of all the giving, because Pandora means giving. That's another way of using philosophy in a more colorful way to see the differences. You can see the difference between Pandora and the patriarchal way of looking at things, and you can learn. Thank you then for being with us on this first episode of Sex Signs. We sign off. Speaking of signs, and I'll get into this a little later, but the hands are signs. Everything is signs. And this is a sign, L for love. So we sign off that way, say love, love, always love. Thank you.